there are a bunch of crazy stories out there concerning the FAFSA, how people have entered in incorrect information, data got lost, financial loans got misinterpreted. I see them on Reddit all the time. So I'm going to go to the Reddit and we're going to pull up a couple stories and we're just going to react to them and see if I can give advice to the circumstance. So let's just go into it. Okay, this is the first one I pulled up under the FAFSA. So this is the subreddit for the FAFSA. FAFSA is BS. Well, some people believe that, and people don't fill it out because they believe that, and they're losing out on a bunch of free money sitting on the table. It doesn't consider any complex situations, and I am being punished for something that's out of my control. For some reason, even though I pay my own bills, have my own apartment, and receive no money or assistance from the parent, I still am a dependent student. Well, this is a big issue. Yes, you're not going to like the situation with the FAFSA, because if you're completely independent, then you need to claim independence. You actually have to get it in the name of the law that you're separated from your parents, that you're a ward of the state, or whatever the circumstance is. Because what ends up happening is you are not a dependent in the name of the law. Because you are a dependent in the name of the law, your parents can still put you on their tax forms. Just because you have your own apartment, just because you're on your own living stance, it doesn't mean that you're independent. It means that you're legally still dependent of your parents. You need to get that corrected and figure out how to be separated from them financially, logistically, and by the law, by the tax laws. So you just got to figure this out before I would even apply to college, because you're not going to get any student loans if you're still connected and they're not giving you. Okay, this is the second one. So this is one of my, one of the big memes that are going out there. I like this one. So I came here for a little while ago and asking for, should I put my mom's boyfriend on the FAFSA? Again, it has to be legal. All of this is all about the legality of your financials. So if you have a boyfriend and that person is paying your phone bill or your grocery bill, it doesn't matter unless it's part of the IRS, how it's connected. So if your mom's boyfriend is married to that person, now that's a stepfather to your circumstance. Then it becomes legal and it's part of the taxation. And you have to fill this out as that person as the stepfather. So then they go on to say that they put that person down as the stepdad on some sort of school card. And the FAFSA reports that the school reports to the school and then reports them lying. So it really depends on what that school card is. So if that is just like your emergency contact card and that's labeled as your stepdad, it's not going to go back to them and say, okay, that person is legally their stepdad. What is going on and why is it not connected to the IRS situation? That's not what that's about. If your financial aid asked you and you put down that that person is your stepdad, now you might be in a little bit of a trouble. You most likely need to just go sit with the financial aid people at your college and sit with them and find out how to make the adjustments to make sure that it connects to your legality of the situation of your mother and your mom's boyfriend. That can be tricky, and I understand all this is very convoluted and very, basically tricky, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to line up your IRS situation and how much taxes you have and how much income you have and how much assets you have versus your financial aid situation. And they want those two to mesh together very well. So if if you're lying on your IRS forms in comparison to your FAFSA forms, that's a big discrepancy problem. If you have some student aid or student card with emergency contacts, nobody's looking at that to make those connections solid, but you got to be careful because any legality goes back to the IRS situation and the financial aid situation. And those two have to match 100%. So here's another one. I'm a little embarrassed of my situation, so I lied. Don't lie on the FAFSA. Just because you're embarrassed is not a reason to lie on the FAFSA. Secondary, the things that you got embarrassed about most likely are going to lead to more financial aid. So basically, you're going to get more money. Okay, so let's read through this a little more. I'm currently homeless, and I have been awarded to the court, but I didn't select either of those options as I don't want them tied to me. Well, guess what? The college admissions people, they don't care. The college people, they don't care. What they do care about is whether or not you lied to them or not. So in your circumstance, maybe you're going to get, into a dorm room, and then that's going to take you away from the homelessness, and you want to get as much money as possible for that situation. You just don't lie. And then if that money can come to you, it's going to come to you very easily by filling out the FAFSA. Now, they got a negative 1,500. That is the lowest possible that you can get. So if you filled it out and you got that number without also including that, great. If you added that, it wouldn't have taken any further down because that's the lowest number you can have, which is a negative number, which means that you're going to get as much financial aid as possible. However, again, it's not worth lying about because at the end of the day, you're going to have to do your taxes at the end of the year, and those things have to match up. Your federal aid, your tax situation have to match up. If you are awarded the state, one of those two is going to find that out, and you just have to make sure that they correlate, because other than that, you're going to run into problems. Okay, here's another one. I'm freaking out. I got a 30,000 SAI number, and my mom has always said that I could go to any college I want. I guess that also assumes for free. My household income is $100,000. And the school I want to go to is $82,000. That's $320,000 for the 4 years. That's expensive. You're right. That is expensive. Most likely you can find somewhere else. If you're not made of money, then you most likely can find another place for that same degree for cheaper and still get the same quality education and get the same salary coming out of it. $82,000 is a lot. You're looking at the top college numbers. Just because you have 30,000 also does not mean that you're not going to get financial aid. 30K, you can get a lot of financial aid, a lot of merit scholarship, a lot of loans. That can narrow down that 82. I've seen basically half off if you have the grades. Again, it has to do with whether or not your scores are above the average of that school or below the average of that school. If you're below the average of the school, they're going to ask you to pay as much as possible. If you're above the average scores of that school, they're going to give you a bunch of merit scholarships trying to get you to that college. So, and even the ones that you're like comparable to, that your scores are about the average, you're going to probably get a lot of merit scholarships too. So don't go too far into it thinking that the world has ended because your FAFSA number is a certain number. Anything can happen. Again, it has to do more with which school you're applying to and where your scores rank against them than anything else. So 30,000 is not a bad number. It's not a good number. It's just a number. And what the merit scholarships do is come back to you and say, okay, this is the number that we're going to give to the college. And then the college is going to figure out how much merit and et cetera can be done. So this is where it kind of gets tricky here. My mom is a teacher and my dad got laid off and makes slightly above minimum wage. But if your household income is 100K, then you're above the median income level. So I think the median is somewhere in the 70, 80 range. 100K is above that average. It means that you have a lot of money in your family. And even though that they live frugally and they don't spend a lot of money, it doesn't mean that they don't have a lot of money or a lot of assets. So that's the reason why you're getting the 30,000 SAI number. So at the end of the day, this is a perspective problem. They think that they are poor because they live in a rich area, but they only are above average, and they feel poor, which means that they think that they will get a lot of financial aid so that you can go to any college of choice. At the end of the day, $82,000 a year is just too much money. I know that it might be your ideal situation, your ideal college, but realistically, if they're not giving you a bunch of merit scholarships and bringing that number way down to almost 30, then most likely I would look for another college. What's interesting is the elite colleges like Harvard, which does start at like 80 grand, states that you're poor if you make under 200,000. So then it's another perspective problem. In this particular case, they would go for free to Harvard because they believe at the Harvard level, $200,000 is a poor family. So it's all about perspective. But like if you're trying to get into what's a really expensive school, Duke. If you're trying to get into Duke and you don't have a lot of money, instead of looking at Duke, maybe you're going to look at a state school. And in those state schools, the state schools might rank better than for whatever your major is. Again, it goes back to your major, and then what major you have really depends on which colleges you should be applying to. And Duke might not be the best at zoology, whereas Washington, UW, might be best at zoology. And so maybe going to a state school in your state versus trying to get into Duke for that major might be the better answer. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at this, but at the end of the day, this particular person thinks they're poor, but they're not actually poor. And the amount of money that could be applied to college is the amount of money that could be applied to college. Okay, here's another interesting one. My dad doesn't want to complete the FAFSA account. So that means that the parent account is not going to get filled out. If it doesn't get filled out by the parent, you have no ability to finish the FAFSA because you have to get the parent section complete, just like the child section. Now, I've actually heard this one a lot, and it's a big shame. What ends up happening is the parent feels like they don't want to give this information out, but they already have given this information out with the IRS. So the IRS has this information, and so what ends up happening is you're not adding really any new extra information. You're just cross-correlating that information to what's on the IRS. So if you filled out your IRS forms, this is just basically the same thing. But I've heard this, and I've heard that people just say flat out, no, I'm not going to enter it. Now, what ends up happening, what do you not get the ability to do? You don't get the ability to get your merit scholarships from the college. They won't give you any money, so you have to pay basically full cost. You will not get any loans from the government, those government-backed loans, which is the cheapest interest rates. So you might have to take out crazy student loans with 10% interest rates and all kinds of stuff. Basically, it makes it so you cannot afford college, and truthfully. And if you're just stacking up on the loans, you most likely will never get that money back from that college education unless you're going to lawyer, medical, or engineering, or some form of computers or finance. Those are the only ones that are going to pay you back enough to justify not having any loans. So realistically, this restricts you greatly. So it might mean that instead of going to the state college or the private college, you're going to go to the community college because that's the only way to pay for it. That's how I would present this to your parents that doesn't want to fill out these loans. It makes it so instead of coming out with a business degree from Ohio State, you're going to get a business degree from a community college in Ohio. And what that delta is could be $20,000 or $30,000 of salary each and every year of the job of choice when you come out of that college. So realistically, they're not just setting you up to fail at your college level, they're setting you up for you to fail holistically over your lifespan. And explain that to your parent. The fact that they're very protective of their information versus the fact that you're going to really have a hard time at life. That's your two side effects here. Those are the two sides of the mirror. Yes, you can go ahead and pay 100% via loans and everything else. But if you're not filling out the FAFSA, you're not going to get any of the merit scholarships. You're not going to get any of the federal loans. You're just going to do it on your own. And when you're doing it on your own, most likely it's not going to pay back the amount of money you're putting into it. So realistically, you got to go down to the community college level and work your way up. Maybe you spend 2 years at a community college and then transfer to the state college of choice. Maybe you can get some loans along the way. Maybe you can separate legally from your parents during those 2 years that you're at community college. And then you can go into your state school for that major and get as much financial aid as possible, because then you can fill out the complete forms based on the fact that you are not a dependent and you do not have a parent filling out the parent section. That's the only way that I think you can get around this. But truthfully, if the parent doesn't want to do FAFSA, in my mind, then that means that they got to fill out and pay for it themselves, whatever way possible. That's the right way of doing this. Now, whether or not they can afford it or not, that's a whole nother subject matter. But if they can't afford it, then they should be filling out the FAFSA so that you can get as much free money as possible. So that's the balance between those two. Well, that was fun. Were really crazy stories on Reddit, but that's kind of what you see on Reddit all the time. At the end of the day, fill out the FAFSA. It doesn't take a lot of time. I have another video where I did it in like less than 10 minutes. So just, go fill it out and make sure that you're doing it legally and truthfully as much as possible. Those are the big key advice items for the FAFSA. And if you like this video, leave us a comment, thumbs up, and subscribe down below. We'd really appreciate it. We're a new channel out here, and any bit can help us greatly. And if you want to see a video on how quickly you can do the FAFSA, just look at our playlist and you'll find it. And thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time, and be nice to everybody. Later. Bye-bye.